By 2040, over half of UK households aged 60 and above will need to unlock their home's value just to retire, but right now, almost nobody is prepared for it. 51% will likely find themselves needing to tap into their housing wealth just to maintain their standard of living in retirement. This isn't some worst-case scenario buried in an obscure report somewhere. A major analysis from Fairer Finance is telling us this right now, and the implications deserve serious attention. For most of your working life, you heard the same story. Work hard, pay into a pension, buy a property, and everything works out fine. That equation's broken. Unless you understand what's actually happening, you could end up in a very uncomfortable position when you stop working. We're about to dive into what the research says, how it impacts your future options, and what routes you should be thinking of taking. Before we dive into the detail, go ahead and gently tap that subscribe button. The UK retirement landscape changes fast. From pensions and tax policy to property market news, Retirement Brief UK tracks and summarises the news impacting your future. Our pensions simply aren't working anymore. The Department for Work and Pensions released figures in July showing that 43% of working-age people, 14.6 million of them, are under-saving for retirement, while another 45% are putting nothing into a pension at all. Among those who are saving, the numbers turn grim. 73% of working-age people won't meet the moderate living standard in retirement of £31,700 a year, and 13% of people, roughly 4.6 million individuals, won't even manage the bare minimum of £14,400 a year. For 2025 to 26, the full new state pension gives you £11,973 a year. Do the maths. That leaves you £2,427 short of the bare minimum, and we haven't mentioned rising care costs, increased longevity, or any kind of financial shock yet. Why is this happening? Three things have collided at once. We've moved from defined benefit pensions, where your employer promised you a certain income for life, to defined contribution pensions, where you get whatever you manage to save and the risk sits entirely with you. We're all living longer. A man reaching 65 today can expect another 18.5 years. A woman can expect 21 years. That's a lot of years to fund. And care costs are rising fast. James Daly from Fairer Finance calls this the perfect storm, and his organisation just published a 52-page report modelling what happens when all of this collides at once. The answer is straightforward. People run out of money. But here's where it gets interesting. Most of those people aren't poor. They're sitting on something extremely valuable. They own a house. British housing wealth works differently than most people realise. It's enormous, and it's concentrated heavily in the hands of older people. The over 60s currently hold £2.89 trillion in net housing wealth. That's nearly £3 trillion. They now own 56% of all owner-occupier housing wealth in the UK. For many people, this turns out to be more valuable than their pension pot ever will be. Property makes up 40% of total household wealth for the average family, while pensions account for only 35%. The Fairer Finance modelling, which looked at 9,720 different household scenarios, suggests something striking. By accessing this housing wealth, households could unlock £23 billion every single year by 2040, measured in today's prices. If that money actually got released into the economy, it would inject about £21 billion in genuine spending. That's 0.7% of what the economy will be worth in 2040. That's not trivial. But here's the critical caveat, and you need to hear this. This isn't a forecast. The researchers were explicit about this. They're not saying this will happen. They're saying this could happen if we remove the barriers that currently prevent it. And there are quite a few barriers standing in the way. Before we look at those barriers, let's understand what equity release actually is, because most people find it confusing. It's quite straightforward, actually. You turn the equity you've built up in your house into cash while you're still alive and still living in it. Two main types exist, but the main one is a lifetime mortgage. You get a lump sum or regular payments, you keep living in the house, You don't make monthly repayments, and the interest rolls up to be repaid when you die or move into long-term care. Most of the time, you can release between 20 and 50% of your property's value. The industry has evolved considerably over recent years. Where there used to be 17 different products available, there are now over 200. More people are choosing drawdown options rather than lump sums, meaning they're taking money as they need it rather than all at once. Interest rates have actually come down, moving from 7.48% in October 2023 to 6.47% a year later. Lending in the first quarter of 2025 came in at £665 million, up 32% year-on-year, showing the market is expanding. But equity release works differently depending on where you live, and location matters quite a bit. The Southeast holds the most housing wealth for the over 60s at £603 billion. London tells an interesting story though. Even though Londoners aged over 60 have only £400 billion in housing wealth, that property wealth makes up 51% of their total wealth. Compare that to other regions where property is a smaller slice of the overall pie, and you see that London's older residents are disproportionately dependent on their homes. Wales and the South West have something different happening. They have the highest percentage of baby boomer homeowners at 49%, which means these regions actually have a high concentration of people who own property outright and might benefit from equity release. The Northeast, meanwhile, presents a problem. It's the only region where median property wealth has actually fallen in real terms over the past decade. People there will have fewer resources to unlock, even if they wanted to. This regional split matters because the pension crisis isn't going to affect everyone equally. Someone in London with modest pension savings but valuable property faces a very different set of options than someone in the Northeast, where property wealth is lower and pension shortfalls are just as acute. Why aren't millions of older people accessing their housing wealth and solving this problem right now? The answer is that significant barriers exist. Some are practical, some are cultural, some are regulatory. Fairer Finance makes clear that housing wealth simply isn't part of the mainstream retirement planning conversation. Financial advisors often work in silos when people seek pension advice. They look at your pension but not your house, keeping these as separate assets rather than one unified retirement picture. A social barrier exists too. For many people, their home is tied up with identity and with leaving something to their children. Accessing housing wealth feels like accepting failure, like admitting you didn't save enough. The regulatory side presents challenges as well. The Financial Conduct Authority looked at equity release advice and wasn't impressed. They found that advisors often take what they call a form-filling approach, ticking boxes rather than understanding what's right for the customer. Younger consumers weren't told about cheaper alternatives like traditional mortgages. Long-term costs have spiraled way beyond what borrowers expected in cases the FCA examined. Debt can end up several times the amount borrowed once compound interest kicks in. Fairer Finance identifies 5 key things that need to change. Build more suitable retirement housing where older people actually want to live. Cut stamp duty for people downsizing. Normalise the idea of accessing housing wealth through guidance services like Pension Wise. Create a single, personalised financial view that shows someone's pension wealth and their housing wealth together. Finally, reform financial advice so that by age 50, people are actively discussing whether later life lending makes sense for them. Let's be honest about the counter-argument though. Equity release carries real risks. Releasing equity from your home reduces the inheritance you can leave to your children. You're exposing yourself to compound interest costs if you live into your 90s, costs that become substantial over decades. There's the genuine fairness question for younger generations who aren't accumulating housing wealth at the same rate due to higher property prices and the difficulty of getting on the housing ladder in the first place. Another issue that the report itself acknowledges deserves attention. It models scenarios, but explicitly doesn't model the trade-off that people actually make between their living standards and their ability to give an inheritance. What will people actually choose when faced with that decision? That remains an open question, and the answer probably varies from person to person. But here's what's undeniable as we look toward 2040. The traditional three-legged stool of retirement, state pension, workplace pension, and personal savings is wobbly for most people. For over half of older households, it's going to give way completely. Many of those people will be property rich and income poor when that happens. For the first time in a generation, home ownership will be discussed as part of retirement planning strategy. Not because it's ideal, but because it's necessary. The question isn't whether housing wealth will play a role in retirement. The question is whether we'll get serious about removing the barriers so people can access it safely, with proper advice, without exploitation and without shame. Right now, millions of people are sleeping in the solution to their retirement security without realizing it. That needs to change, and it needs to change soon. Have you already put your house at the center of your retirement planning? Are you afraid to put your home on the table, and in doing so, take it away from your children? Will you have managed to accumulate enough pension wealth to avoid this? If so, how? Let us know in the comments below. If you found this breakdown helpful, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe to Retirement Brief UK for more essential updates on the UK retirement landscape. We cover everything from changes to the property market, summarising news on legislation changes and market trends to practical advice for homeowners and investors. Ring the notification bell so you never miss an update that could affect your retirement planning decisions. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.